think it's absolutely positively something that, that has to happen in the next couple of weeks. But I think in order for everything to kind of come back online and with hope that we're going to see a pickup in growth and activity, I should say, in the coming months, that I think it's fairly important that oil at least hold these levels. And if we can see oil again push up towards the levels that they're expecting during the summer months based on the futures pricing somewhere in the low 30s, I think ultimately that will help relieve the pressure on the bond market, and that will ultimately benefit the equity markets.
Dan, really appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us today here on Bloomberg Markets. Dan Deming of KKM Financial. Coming up, we're going to get the latest on the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson's health as he remains in intensive care here in London. Plus, we're going to be joined by ING's Global Head of Markets, Chris Turner, is going to be joining the programme to give us his take. We'll be talking more about what's happening with the foreign exchange story as we also await some details on this Eurogroup meeting as well. European markets, equities certainly bid, bonds on offer. This is going to be certainly something we're going to see around the world. Stock 600 up by 0.9%. It's off earlier highs, though. The travel and leisure sector halving over the last hour or so. It's only up by 4.5% now. This is Bloomberg.
You're already here. He's my best friend. Bobby. She's fine. Who else is looking for you? There's no one else. Bring you to the silver room. We'll keep you from it. We won't get very far for long.
Live from London, I'm Guy Johnson with Alex Steele over in New York. We're now counting it down to the European close right here on Bloomberg Markets. Alex, we have seen something of a turnaround when it comes to equities here in Europe over the last hour or so. We were up significantly more earlier on in the session. But as you can see, the Stoxx 600 is now only up by 1.2%. The travel and leisure sector, which is by far and away the best performing sector, when we checked this time an hour ago, was up over 9%. That has certainly faded. The euro is giving back some ground as well. It is still up on the day versus the US dollar, but certainly off its earlier highs, which were around kind of 109.20, 109.21. We're now trading 108 again, the handle. And as you can see, we have got yields going higher. So Bunds on offer and the UK gilts on offer as well. We are 38 basis points on a UK 10-year as we watch what happens or what is going to happen next over at St Thomas's Hospital with the Prime Minister in the ICU. Alex.
Yeah, it's a similar story here in the U.S. We're well off our highs of the session after rolling over a bit past 10 o'clock. But within the S&P, you still have the beaten down names kind of doing the best. I mean, Kohl's is the second best performing stock, and Royal Caribbean is the third best performing stock. So we're still in the buy what's been beaten up kind of bound. So it remains to be seen if this is any sort of substantial rally here or just sort of a rally within a bear market. And you can see that really reflected in other asset classes. You're seeing a little bit of a bear steepener continue here in the U.S. We have $25 billion worth of 10-year supply coming online in just about 2 hours. The 3-year yesterday was okay, but we did have a ton of supply, so the bid to cover was a little bit weak. The dollar continues to roll over today after yesterday was able to hold on to its strength, but giving up some of those gains today. And oil is still holding on to positive territory. It is still the best performing sector within the S&P as well. But we'll see as we head into the next few hours if we're able to hold on to these gains, Guy.
Absolutely. The kind of the correlation between what we're seeing in terms of the virus data and the market performance, people are certainly nervous about that relationship. Talking of the virus, Alex, here in the UK, Boris Johnson's government is facing a serious challenge at the worst possible time in the virus outbreak, with the Prime Minister hospitalised and ministers under pressure to solve medical equipment shortages that are certainly making headlines on a daily basis. Joining us now on the phone with the latest is Bloomberg's UK government editor, Ed Evans. Ed, what do we know about Boris Johnson's condition?
Well, we understand he's in a stable condition in intensive care, and his office saying he's in good spirits. Importantly, they are at pains to say that he has not received mechanical ventilation. That's important because patients with coronavirus who go on to mechanical ventilation see their life chances decrease significantly. So we'll get a further update from Downing Street on the Prime Minister's condition. We're expecting one in the next hour or so, and we'll see whether his condition has deteriorated further or is continuing to stabilise.
Impossible. I can't carry anymore.
Can you give me a little bit of perspective, being an American, on sort of what the chain of command and how it works? Because here with the Constitution, if something happens or the president's incapacitated, it goes to the vice president. It is pretty clear. What's it like in the UK?
Completely different is the short answer. There's no written constitution. There's no vice president as such. What Johnson has done unusually is to name a cabinet colleague, Dominic Raab, as the first Secretary of State. So he will effectively deputise for Boris Johnson. But again, he will be constrained by the cabinet. He won't have the full powers of the Prime Minister. He will have to deal with his cabinet colleagues. And remember, both Raab, Michael Gove, and Matt Hancock, all those who are involved in the response to the coronavirus, all of them ran for Boris Johnson's job. So we'll see how long, what they portray this morning as a position of a united cabinet, how long that situation lasts for.
Yeah, the short term's a rallying ground. We'll see what happens in the longer term.
Yeah.
Ed, do we know how much authority, though, has been transferred to Mr. Raab at this stage?
It's still unclear. I think the big question is, who is going to be chairing cabinet, who is going to be leading the government's press conferences, who is in charge. We could see some tension between Raab and Matt Hancock. Matt Hancock, the health secretary, who's been leading the push from the NHS, which has really been the focus of government efforts right now. They're trying to get ahead on testing. They're trying to get ahead on providing enough equipment in the form of ventilators on hospital wards and to equip medical staff with equipment like masks and gowns, the personal protective equipment that they need. That's where really the focus of government attention has been in recent days.
Ed, to follow up on that a little bit, are we in a place where policy is set and now we're just executing, or are there further steps the government is going to be taken that's going to kind of feel the hit with Boris Johnson in the ICU, like extending lockdowns, for example, or getting stricter with those who aren't abiding by the rules?
That's going to be the difficulty. Raab has been at pains to say that the focus of the cabinet at the moment is on executing, on delivering the Prime Minister's plans. Now, the problem is that the cabinet has got to make some very big choices as we get into what it will be the peak of the virus. As you say, do they extend the lockdown? Do they make it stricter? Do they have to make choices about which patients get treatment? How do they prepare the country and the economy? How do they put it on an even keel afterwards? These are big political choices that the PM won't be necessarily able to take part in. So we'll see then, that may be the moment that you start to see the tensions emerge within the cabinet.
Ed, there's been some chatter today, certainly on kind of virtual trading desks, about the possibility of some sort of unity government. How close could that potentially be? We have a new leader now of the Labour Party in Sir Keir Starmer. What is the possibility that the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, with its big majority, do need to work together?
Well, I think you saw Johnson in recent days actually trying to bring Labour and other opposition parties to involve them more with the response to the coronavirus. I think he invited them into meetings in Downing Street to discuss it. I think we'll see what happens really, what really matters how long Johnson stays in hospital. Michael Gove, talking this morning, was saying no talk of forming a national unity government. I think Starmer's been pretty reluctant to do the same. That, of course, may change if this situation is prolonged.
Ed, it's sort of a similar but broader question to that. How has the UK government under Boris Johnson been working with world leaders? For example, here in the US, President Trump on Friday announced an export ban on certain medical goods and then reversed it yesterday. So there's been a lot of push and pull on that front. What's it been like in the UK, and is that all disrupted?
There's been a tremendous amount of pull, as it were. The big argument here has been over ventilators and whether the UK could have or should have signed up to a European Union programme to buy more of them. There were 4 invitations extended to the UK government, all 4 of which were turned down. The government says, for its part, that this programme didn't offer it anything that it couldn't do on its own. So you're seeing there those tensions about international trade, about what the UK's relations with other parts of the world are. And you're seeing them being really coming to the fore.
All right, I really appreciate you taking the time. It was obviously a staggering headline when it crossed yesterday. Thank you very much. Now I want to get an update on what's making headlines in the market. Taylor Riggs has more. Hey, Taylor.
Yeah, Alex, yes. I wanted to take a look at some of the major averages because as you were noting, coming off the highs of the session, and this is as the volatility in the VIX index has been increasing just a little bit or so. There are some headlines that could be causing this. The number of U.S. homeowners with mortgages who've now stopped making payments jumped to 2.6%. That's up from 0.25% just a month ago. And the loans that are supporting low and moderate income borrowers, those are also jumping now to 4.25%. Those are the loans that are now in forbearance. So you are still getting a lot of optimism, but there are still a lot of cracks out there. Some of the cracks that we're seeing, though, are not in the bond market. Take a look at the 10-year yield. Yields are rising now for a second additional day. They were up 8 basis points yesterday, an additional 8 basis points today. So we've climbed from 58 basis points last week to now 76 basis points or so in just a matter of a few days. What that means is you are translating that into additional gains in both the investment grade and the high yield index. Investment grade continues to have a lot of optimism that they will be supported by the Fed's purchasing. And the high yield index is up. This is interesting. This is even after fallen angels are keeping the high yield index growing. And so you are seeing some glimmers of hope here, but I would argue that there is still a lot of unknowns still left within that high yield market. And what has been lagging traditionally in this market route is also now leading today. This is a similar story that we saw yesterday. The auto index is one that I'll just touch on here briefly, up more than 8%. Ford and GM are leading those gains. So again, perhaps the big turnaround here, what was losing in the last week, now gaining today. Guy.
Taylor, thank you very much indeed. We're just getting some details coming through in terms of what is happening in New York, the States, in terms of the new cases and deaths that are happening. Governor Cuomo just briefing 138,836 cases now, up from 130,689 yesterday. New York reporting 731 new virus deaths. That is the biggest daily jump that has been seen. That may account for why maybe equity markets are just getting a little softer. We're going to carry on the conversation regarding those markets. Coming up next, Chris Turner, the global head of markets at ING, will get his take on what is happening stateside, plus also what is happening here in London with the Prime Minister hospitalised. This is Bloomberg.
I am David Weston. Bloomberg Television is reinventing one of the most iconic brands of financial television for a new audience. Join me to see the news program for the clever investor. This is Bloomberg Wall Street Week.
Live from New York, I'm Alex Steele with Guy Johnson from London. This is the European close. A big headline for you now. Apparently, New York reporting its biggest daily jump in deaths. The death total now is 5,489. This is coming from Governor Cuomo's press conference here. Biggest daily jump in deaths. So, as Guy mentioned, may not be a surprise if markets are